Hey there, we're back for the final lesson of this module, the wonderful module number 3, Understanding Music Publishing. And this particular lesson is going to focus on publishers and sync agents, and it is obviously building on the last lesson, which explained what synchronization income in fact was. So there's a really important point to make at the beginning here. When we talk about a sync license, the music industry generally takes a bit of a shortcut. And what they do is they describe a sync as being the use of a song and a recording for a particular ad or movie or TV opportunity. That's not strictly correct. What is strictly correct is that the use of the song is called a sync, and hence the giving of permission for the use of that song is called a sync license, and the use of the recording of that song is called a master license. Now, generally speaking, people just refer to it as getting a sync, and that's fine. You know, we all know what that refers to, but strictly there is two elements to it: permission to use the musical composition and permission to use the sound recording. And when we talk about the sound recording, we talk about the master recording, and that's why strictly that is what's called a master license. So you might think, oh well, come on Andrew, that just sounds like a bit of semantics, but there's actually a reason why I am a little bit insistent on using the correct language. The reason for that is that there is a power imbalance between the owner of the song and the owner of the recording. Think of it this way. If the owner of the song, the songwriter or their publisher, says, no, you're not able to use the song, that's the end of the story. You can't use the recording without using the song, because the recording is a recording of the song. So the publisher and the songwriter have the most powerful role here. If they say no, it doesn't matter what the record company or the recording artist says, because you can't use the recording without using the song. And if you don't have permission to use the song, forget about it. If the ball is in the other court though, if it's slightly different, let's say the songwriter says, yep, I'm more than happy for you to use my song. And the music user, the film director or the ad agency or the video game creator says, well, yeah, we love your song, but we don't particularly want to use the recording of your song, whether it's your recording or somebody else's. We actually just want to use the song and not the recording. And that would frequently happen. Let's say you have a scene in a movie where a character in the movie is driving their car down the road and they're singing to themselves. They're not singing the recording, they're singing the song. And so you don't need to get permission to use a recording of that song, because you're not using a recording of the song. You're only using the musical composition, the song itself. Or maybe if you have a situation where the songwriter has said, yep, I'm happy for you to use my song, and they've agreed on a fee for that. And then the record company or the recording artist says, well, actually, we want a much bigger amount of money to use our recording. We want $100,000 to use the recording, and they only have to pay the publisher $50,000 to use the song. The movie might say, well, all right, we'll pay for the use of the song and we'll make our own recording. And they can. They're entitled to do that if the songwriter says, yeah, I'm happy for you to use session singers and make a new recording. And there's lots of examples of that. If you've listened to a lot of advertising, you might hear a song that's very familiar to you, but not the original recording of it. It might be a, sound-alike recording, or even a, completely different version of the song recorded by somebody completely different, because it suits the mood or the need of that particular use. So the song really is the pivotal part of any synchronization deal. The master recording sometimes it could be take it or leave it sort of situation. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Now, generally, songwriters and publishers and recording artists and record companies work, dare I say it, in sync on these kind of deals. Generally speaking, there's cooperation between the two. They'll talk about both copyrights, the copyright in the song and the copyright in the sound recording, and they'll get together and say, all right, let's do a deal for $100,000 for both copyrights, and that will be $50,000 for the song and $50,000 for the master recording. And they don't have to, they're not obliged to work together, but generally speaking they do cooperate, so that you're not having a situation where the publisher is saying, hey, I'll give you the use of the song for $5,000, and the record company saying, well, actually we think it's worth 50. They'll generally try to be on the same page. And this parity, or this equality between the master license and the sync license, is called a most favoured nations clause, or it's sort of called that. It means that the two copyrights, not one of them is not worth more than the other in that particular deal. And so obviously publishers and record companies do collaborate when somebody wants both the song and the recording. So let's, because this is a module about the music publishing industry, let's put the role of the publisher in these synchronization opportunities under the microscope. I've already said that it's important that publishers are active in this space. There's good reasons for that. One, it's great income, and if the publisher's getting 30% of the income and the songwriter's getting 70% of the income, or some numbers like that, it's important to both of them. It's a significant amount of income that can be generated from that catalogue. So that's great. It's good for everyone, and generally speaking, there's not a lot of costs involved in doing that deal. It's simply a bit of paperwork that says, yep, we give permission, and in return you'll pay us a fee. And it's pretty easy money once you actually have your song accepted for a sync opportunity. But as we discussed briefly in the last class, there's lots of flow-on effects that might flow from that sync, and you might find that the artist's career gets a significant boost by doing that sync deal. So a publisher needs to be strategic. They need to advise the songwriter, look, they're not paying necessarily a huge sync fee, but there is some other added bonuses for you and for us as the publisher from doing that sort of deal. Now, it's a specialist area, and if your publisher does not have someone who really specializes in these licensing or sync opportunities, you might want to ask the question whether they're the right publisher for you. If you think, my music's not suited for that sort of thing anyway, sync opportunities are not really going to come my way, well, maybe you don't need a publisher who is particularly active in that area. But if you believe that sync opportunities are a genuine opportunity for you and your songs to generate some income, you'd like to think that your publisher has dedicated staff who are working day in, day out to source and negotiate those opportunities. Now, the other advantage of a publisher doing this is that music supervisors, film and television, advertising agencies, they like to fish where the fish are swimming. If they know that a music publisher has a huge catalogue of songs, of course they're going to contact that music publisher and say, hey, what have you got that might work for a dog food ad? What have you got that might work for, a documentary about sport or whatever it might be? They'll go to the publisher, and the publisher needs to know their own catalogue, know what songs they have in their catalogue, and normally that means they need dedicated people whose job it is to work through the catalogue, know what they've got, and be ready to respond to any request from a music supervisor or sync representative of an ad agency or someone like that. So publishers normally have these people that are called licensing managers, and they do two things. They receive inbound inquiries. So when somebody says, hey, we want to use the song in a movie or a TV show, it goes to the licensing manager, and the licensing manager then negotiates the deal and does all the paperwork to ensure that you get paid for the use of your song. Some of these licensing managers are even more specific. They specialise entirely in film and TV, or they specialise in games music. So again, if your music is totally suited to the gaming environment, it'd be kind of nice to have a publisher who also has somebody who is an expert in that area. So you really need to consider how these publishers deal with the sync side of their business. All right, now a couple of times I've mentioned music supervisors. These are the counterparts on the user side of music to sync agents or publishers. A music supervisor is someone who works on behalf of the end user of music. So they're employed by a film studio or a TV production company or a game producer or an ad agency, and their job is to go out and get the music that the director or the producer wants. So they source the music, they reach out to their contacts in the publishing industry and to sync agents, and maybe sometimes to individual songwriters, and say, hey, look, this is what we're looking for, and this is our budget. This is the amount of money that we've got to spend on music, and this is how we want the music to be presented. This is the sort of use that we want to make of the music. And so the music supervisors probably get together and have lunch with the licensing people from publishing companies and talk about what music is available and what their needs are. So it's important, if you are a licensing manager at a publisher, or if you're a sync agent, to actually have those relationships. You want music supervisors coming to you knowing that you've got a great catalogue of songs and you're going to work hard to find something that will suit their needs at a price they can afford. It's a really important relationship, and if you're an individual songwriter, sure, it'd be great if you had personal relationships with music supervisors, but it's sometimes hard to achieve because a music supervisor will know that you've only got your own catalogue that you're representing, whereas if they go to a licensing manager, that licensing manager is likely to have a whole bunch of catalogues from a whole bunch of writers. So by all means, introduce yourself to music supervisors, get to know them, but be realistic also that they're probably more likely to go looking in bigger ponds of bigger songs rather than just come to you as an individual songwriter. So we touched on this in the last class. What makes for a good sync deal? What's the right amount? Well, that's almost impossible to answer, because the real answer to that is, what's the value of music? How do you measure the value of music? If you're an individual songwriter, if you're a publisher, if you're a sync agent, you need to have some sense of what the value of music is in particular circumstances, in particular types of use. Now, that's really difficult because there are so many moving parts to sync deals, to identifying the value of music. So here are some of the variables. What sort of project is it? Is it film? Is it TV? Is it advertising? Or is it a game? How big is the project? Is it a Hollywood film? Is it a Bollywood film? Is it a student film? Now, obviously, the capacity of a Hollywood blockbuster to pay for the use of music is going to be much greater than a student film. Most student films will say, we can't afford to pay anything for the value for music. We're just looking for songwriters who might be willing to let us use their music for free. And they might find some songwriters who are willing to do that because they like the project. But you'd be hard pressed to have a Hollywood blockbuster come to you and say, look, we don't really have a music budget and we're just hoping that you'll do this for exposure. That's just not right and not fair and not realistic, even though you'll hear that from time to time, I'm sure. How is the music going to be used in that project? Is it background music? Could be anything really, but they just want some music, in which case you don't have a strong bargaining position. Is it opening or closing titles? They're obviously worth more than background music in a minor scene in the film or the TV show. Is it a vital scene? Is it the scene that's going to be remembered forever? A major fight scene or a wedding scene or a car chase or whatever it might be. The more important that the music is in that particular area, the more they would expect to pay for it. How broadly is this use of music going to be distributed? Is it just for your state? Is it just for a TV ad in your hometown on your local cable channel? Is it statewide? Is it one country only? Is it global? Is it a global campaign for Nike, or is it a local ad for your local pizza shop or something like that? Not that pizza shops probably have a lot of money to pay for music, but maybe you'll get paid in pizza. What platform is it on? Is it on network TV? Is it on streaming TV? Is it for a podcast? Is it going to be used in trailers for cinema advertising? Is it online only and it's not going to be featured in any films? Is it for a film festival and not for a general release film? How long do they want to pay for the use of your music? A lot of advertising campaigns might run for 12 months, or they might be a very specific campaign. It might be, one ad. It might be a Super Bowl ad. That's a really big audience, but they only want it one time. So they're not going to pay for a year or 10 years or something if they only want to use the music in an ad for 1 month or 2 months or whatever the case may be. Or do they want to pay for the use of your music in perpetuity? I guarantee you that no Hollywood film is going to say, oh yeah, we only need a license for your music for 12 months because let's say the film's a hit, they don't want to have to replace your music or renegotiate with you 12 months from now. They'd want to get the rights forever, so your music never gets stripped out of the film and replaced by something else. And here's a really interesting one. What are they advertising, or what is the nature of the film? If you think that the film is really disreputable, it's not a cause that you want to promote. If you think the product is something you don't want your song associated with, well, they're going to have to pay a premium for you to allow them to use your song if you're not a big supporter of the product or the theme of the movie. Or you might simply say no. You might just go, look, I'm not into that film. I think it sends a very bad message to people, and I'm not prepared to have my music in that film. Or you might say, everybody's got a price. And you might be able to mount an argument that you're not particularly fond of fast food, but if they really want to use your song, they can pay a little bit extra because you're a bit reluctant. And that's a negotiating tactic as well as a realistic tactic. And of course, there's been numerous examples of artists not wanting their music used for political advertising because they don't accept the viewpoint of the particular candidate or political party that wants to use their music, and they will politely tell the political candidate to get stuffed. I think that's a legal term. Is it exclusive or non-exclusive? Do they want to prevent you from using your music or allowing somebody else to use your music, or do they want that to be an exclusive use? So it's a lot of variables there, and you could put all those variables together and there is a massive spectrum of different types of uses that will command different fees. It's not clearly from that slide a one-size-fits-all situation. And this is where the experience of the publisher or the sync agent comes in. You don't want to allow your music to be used too cheaply because it's your music. You're entitled to extract the maximum value from your hard work and your talent. But equally, you don't want to put your fee so high that they say, look, we can't really afford to use that and we'll use some alternative music. So you want to do a deal that allows you to get the deal, but you don't want to do a deal that's so cheap that actually undervalues your music. And that's kind of hard. And there is one other variable, and that is how massively in love are they with your particular song for that particular use. If the film director cannot imagine that scene with any other music than your music, well, you can probably write your own paycheck. Well, assuming they have some sort of a budget. They're happy to pay for something that they are obsessed by. And they're also happy to go somewhere else if they think there's another viable alternative. So you don't know. You don't know how tied to your particular piece of music the ad agency or the movie producer might actually be. It's going to be different every time. So, to wrap up this module and this particular lesson, there is both art and science involved in determining the value of a song, particularly for sync purposes. The art is understanding and reading people and knowing how much they really want to use your song. The science is calculating the value of the different types of uses. And there is no law that says you can't pitch your music directly to music supervisors or any other relationships you have. You don't have to go through a publisher or a sync agent. But if you are going to go direct, just be aware that A, it's probably going to be difficult, and B, you have to then be the one who puts a value on the use of your music. And if you've never done that before, it's very hard to work that out. That's where publishers and sync agents are particularly useful. But, you can always get advice from someone. You can say, hey, I've pitched my song at a particular project. They've come back to me and they've made me an offer. Ask your lawyer, ask somebody who's more experienced and say, is this a fair deal? Am I getting the right sort of money for this opportunity, or should I be asking more? So it can be done, but be wary and also be brave enough to ask for advice when you actually need it. All right, that wraps up that module. We're obviously going to do other courses that are going to provide a deep dive into things like synchronization or composing for film, or lots of other parts of the Vampr Academy will grow their own courses and deep dive modules over time. But for now, in this backbone module, the Music Business Essentials, I'd like to think you know a whole lot more about the business of publishing than you did a couple of hours ago. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next module.